Hey everyone, this is the Summerville Sentinel interview series. I'm here today with our special guest, who is a candidate running for the South Carolina State Senate in areas of Berkeley County, North Charleston, Summerville, and more places he'll tell us. Bryan Adams, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's an honor. I appreciate you having me on.
Man, it's an honor to have you. Bryan, you just recently retired with North Charleston, is that right?
That is correct. I spent most of my adult life in some sort of public service.
Amazing, amazing. So you were with the North Charleston Police Department, is that right?
Correct. That's where I retired from. I retired there as a rank of lieutenant.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, well, Bryan, it's not often that we get former law enforcement officers that are looking to run for the state senate. That's insane, man. And we are in crazy times. We were just talking about how we probably won't be able to, do any door knocking for campaigns this year, and so it's forums like this where people are going to be able to hear from their candidates. Now, Bryan, what parts of this Senate district? I know a lot of it's in Summerville, lots in other places. Where does it encompass?
Yeah, most of it's in Berkeley County, but it starts at the top part of North Charleston, like the Otranto, Deer Park area, and then it goes over towards the Tanner Plantation, wrapping its way back up towards 52, going towards Old Mount Holly Road. Then it comes over, incorporating Foxborough, Olive Crowfield, College Park, Tall Pines, Sangaree, and
Wow.
then the top part goes up towards Cane Bay. It encompasses half of Cane Bay, and then it goes through Weatherstone, which is behind Target and Somerville, and there's like this little finger that jets out through the downtown area of Somerville.
Okay, wow, that's a pretty large state senate district. For those that
Yes.
don't know, this seat has been occupied by State Senator Paul Campbell, who is embroiled in many different controversies. We won't go through that, but he decided to not run for this reelection, and I believe it's you and one other person. So there's no incumbent, and I think that you definitely have some great qualifications. Bryan, what is it that made you decide to throw your hat in the race and step up? Make the sacrifices with your family, large family you have. What is it that made you want to step up, man?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I've been a public servant pretty much my entire life. And I started volunteering as soon as I could at the fire department here at Caramy. And then I did that for a couple years, and then started volunteering with the Berkeley County EMS, did that for a couple years. And
Wow.
then I started working at City of Goose Creek Police Department, did that for a few years. And then I moved from there to the city of North Charleston, where I finished out my career after 25 years and retired at the rank of lieutenant. And so during
Amazing.
that time, I got several different leadership programs, schools I went to, commander school programs, different community outreach type service programs I did. So there's definitely some different things and training I've gone through over the 27 years of law enforcement that I'm
Wow.
able to, move back and kind of give back to the communities.
One of the things people don't realize, state senators actually appoint judges. How do you think that your roles in law enforcement and public service for 27 freaking years, that's a long time. How do you think that your experience there will translate to the kind of judges that you nominate?
Well, I'm going to look for judges and support those judges who don't take personal uh, put their personal feelings towards their judgments or their rulings. At the end of the day, they're there to sit on a bench and rule on the law that they're reading. And they got to understand how to apply that law and what they've learned and apply it to the case that's in front of them. They can't take their personal feelings, no matter what it is, and apply it to that ruling in front of them. And that's the kind of judges we need. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, they got to apply the law first. That's what counts.
Bryan, one of the hot topics right now is yesterday, actually, there was massive protests out in front of the Michigan state capitol. You saw people honking their horns all at the same time, people protesting in their cars, adhering to the social distancing, but protesting some of the draconian measures that the governor has been taking. It seems that some of the undercurrents here in South Carolina are building towards the same thing happening here in the next couple weeks. There's been thousands of folks calling and urging the governor to open, and then 3 state legislators this week wrote a letter, Jonathan Hill, Josiah Magson, Stuart Jones. They wrote a letter saying, hey, we got to find a way to reopen. 22 million people are unemployed. Well, what are your thoughts on these kind of protests, and where do you stand on reopening?
Absolutely. So what we need to do is apply common sense. If a business is not going to put people in jeopardy to where there's not going to be 20 of them in a small room, then why can't they reopen and figure it out how to way to keep people safe to where we can start getting things moving again and get these businesses going, especially some of these small businesses. And the problem right now is I think there's some government overreach. I think it's within good intentions. I
Hmm.
think their mind is set right, but they're putting rules in place and they're trying to enforce laws that's unenforceable. And one of the things I'm going to bring up is the Philadelphia incident. That gentleman was on the bus without a mask. The officers went on there and they forcefully removed him. And the next day, Philadelphia come out and said, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done
Hmm.
that. And in turn, apologize. And I'm sure that's going to end up in a lawsuit somewhere.
Oh
But
yeah.
there's hundreds, if not thousands, of those cases going on across our country right now. And I think there are departments, whether the county, state, or city, they have to look at that and see what's within the constitutional right to their ability to go do. And I think that's what's happening is they're not understanding the position and they're overstepping the boundaries and enforcing some of these rules that are unenforceable. And so I think that's where Michigan's at. And I've seen several other, I think there's like 5 states now trying to put rules like on Walmart that you can only sell the food, you can't sell the bicycles. So if they're in the store anyways, what's the difference if they're by the food aisle or if they're the bicycle aisle? You know, and I think it's just they're trying to overstep. And what I think I'm main thing I'm worried about is a Pandora's box that we open up, that these mayors they're using these executive orders now, and 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road, they have a rash of shootings. And the first thing they're going to say is, I'm going to do an executive order. We're going to
Mm,
close down all the gun stores.
right. Mm.
And so then where do we go? Now I'm sure there'd be lawsuits, but in time that hurts businesses and hurts people, and also it infringes on our rights.
Yeah, I agree. It does set a dangerous precedent. That's definitely interesting. Now, let me ask you one quick question. As far as you're running to be a candidate. You're running. When's the election, Brian? On
June 9th.
9th? June 9th.
Yes.
So people are definitely going to be able to get absentee ballots. I think they have until what, mid-May to get that absentee ballot out.
Well, yes. So if they don't file for their absentee ballot, that by May 11th, they have to go to the polls. Now,
Okay.
understand the polls are still open as of right now, June 9th. That is the polls are open. You do not have to get an absentee ballot. And one thing I want to stress to everybody is if they file for an absentee ballot, once they do it, they can't change their mind and go to the poll. They have to
Hmm.
send the absentee ballot. So they got to make sure if they get an absentee ballot, they send it in. If they get an absentee ballot, they can't go to the poll then. You can't do both.
Okay. That is good stuff. Okay, that is really good. I didn't know about that. That's great. Okay, well, I want to ask you a couple issue-based questions. A lot of
Okay.
Republicans will vote in Columbia. They'll say all the right things in election time, and then they'll go to Columbia and they'll completely go against everything they ran on. I'll give you 3 different kind of rapid-fire issues because I don't want it to stretch too long. But where do you stand on 3 really important issues that I've been hearing from constituents all throughout Summerville, for example? Constitutional carry, the Compassionate Care Act, and personhood. Where do you stand on those 3?
I support all 3 of them. And me being a law enforcement officer, I've always supported a constitutional carry. Now you're gonna see some different associations out there. Chief Association does not support constitutional carry. However, that's a hired position. So you'll see the Chiefs Association kind of fall in line to whatever their hired boss is, and that's kind of why the Chiefs Association does not support the constitutional carry. And then you'll see the Sheriff's Association who support the constitutional carry. So, and I think what that is that we need to get back to restoring our Second Amendment is where we need to get back to.
So being on the law enforcement side, the Compassionate Care Act is something that I saw a poll posted in the Berkeley County Growth and Development Group, and it was something like 90% yes, 10% no of people who do support versus people who don't support that. Being on the law enforcement side, being someone who's had to enforce some of these laws before, how do you end up on the side of responsible medicinal cannabis use? Is that something that you support?
It is something I support. So at the end of the day, so there's 2 different sides. I've been asked this several times. I support the medical side of it. And I've got other people who have asked me, well, why don't you just support legalizing it? And this is how I define it. And I think it makes sense to everybody once I define it this way. So once I legalize marijuana, I have just put for medicinal, not for medicinal use, for just to recreational. Thank you.
Right.
That fell out of my mind. So for recreational use, once we legalize marijuana for recreational use, we're now given the ability to 18-year-olds who normally would not have tried marijuana, that when they turn 18, it's almost like when they turn 21, they can drink a beer. Would be doing the same thing with marijuana. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up this door for so many people to be addicted, not just to marijuana, for that to grow into other addictions. So that's why I'm against legalizing recreational use for marijuana. Why do we want to open up the door to several thousand people who normally would never have tried it to trying it? But medical, I have no problem with it, especially for seizures and eye issues and things like that. So there's no problem when we can verify if we can use opiates for medical use. Why can't we use marijuana for medical use?
I agree, and I've heard many stories from veterans and even former LEOs that are even in other states. I'm from Florida. A lot of the folks we know in Florida that have the medicinal cards, and man, it's just the things some of these guys see in war, see in battle, it messes their heads up. And rather than giving them an addictive opiate, I think some kind of smokeless, and that's what this bill is. This is a smokeless. There's no no one's gonna be smoking grass. It's all edible. They call it the most conservative bill in the country. So lastly, on the third issue of personhood, we saw a lot of Republicans vote against pro-life legislation. That's something that just absolutely confuses me. I guess I don't understand. Bryan, why do Republicans in the state Senate and in the state House vote against pro-life legislation, and how will you react in the state Senate when these bills come? Is this something you're going to be championing, or is this something you won't be voting for?
This is something I will stand my ground on. My family knows, I've got a very large family, and I got 4 children. 2 of them are married. I got 1 granddaughter. I got a grandson on the way, and I cannot tell you how against abortion I am. I just can't see it being used, and I don't understand how abortions can be done by doctors after they've taken their oath. So it's really confusing to me, and I just can't see it. So I would stand my ground and support, the pro-life stances throughout my time in the Senate.
That's awesome, man. We need more up there like that. I definitely commend that, Bryan, because it's not an easy stance to take, but you do get the backlash that comes with it. But at the same time,
and let me tell you something else. So, and my bringing up to my family and the way I am with my wife and my kids and everything like that. Several people have asked me, well, because I defend pro-life, and the reason why I defend it is who am I to take a life? Why would I be able to take that innocent life who can't defend themselves? So then they come back at me and they say, well, yeah, but you defend capital punishment. I said, you're wrong. I don't defend capital punishment. I don't think we should. What better penalty is there when I take you and I put you for the rest of your life in a 4x8 cell?
Right. So you're against the death penalty.
I am.
So that's consistent.
Consistent. Once again, who am I to take their life? If they're not hurting me at a time or hurting somebody else or trying to hurt my family or trying to hurt my property, it's not up to me to take their life. That's up to God.
Wow. That's very profound and consistent, because we all know that life begins at conception. Anybody can look at that. When you have kids, when you have 4 kids like you have, I remember you telling me you had them early and like real close to each other, and it's kind of like what I've done. And you go to the baby appointments, you hear the heartbeat, 6 weeks in, you're hearing that heartbeat. You're saying to yourself, I cannot believe people with a conscience, God forgives everything, but have the gall to take that person's life at 6 weeks or 20 weeks, or right now I believe it's 20 weeks is the cutoff in South Carolina. So I'm glad to hear that that's something that you would definitely take a stand on, man, because sometimes people go along to get along up there, and then sometimes they go up there and it's hard to take these stands, but if it's on your heart, man, it sounds like.
Right. And I think it could be done respectfully. You just go up there and you don't have to be mean or nasty about it. You
Sure.
just tell them, this is my line. This is where I'm at with it. And we need to negotiate and get back to where our values. This is what the Republicans say they stand for and where they're at. Let's get back to that. Let's stand there. Let's stand tall and be proud of where we want to be.
I love it. Now, tell me about this. On the subject of Republicans kind of not adhering to the Republican platform, we saw the largest tax increase in state history back when the gas tax was passed. Over $700 million in revenue has been raised. We've seen it incrementally keep raising, and keep raising since then, even though we have a massive surplus that less than 10% of that money has been spent on an infrastructure project. So I'm curious, what can be done at this point with where we are with the gas tax, and how would you have voted for it, and what can we do to get some of that infrastructure money back home in Summerville?
Yeah, I wouldn't have voted for the gas tax because the constituents didn't want it. And that's ultimately what the representatives and the senators are. We're the voice of the constituents. And the constituents did not want the gas tax. And, maybe if the DOT would have been audited and they'd have seen where all the money was going, or who's being paid what, or how it's being funded to certain areas, if it's all being equally compared to the roads, then maybe people would have pushed for it. But they didn't do an audit. They rammed it down everybody's throat. And now they got it. It's already been increased 3 times. They got $700 million sitting up there. 10% has been used. And that's almost what their initial cap was of $1 billion, or what they initially said it was going to cost to fix our infrastructure. So in turn, the money's not getting back to the counties as it is. So what's happening now too is the counties are having to go out and do 1 cent sales tax or 1 cent road tax on roads to be fixed that are state roads. So the county's having to increase the tax again to fix, like College Park Road, 176. These are all roads that are state roads that the counties are in turn fixing. And that's not right. So the people, the constituents in the area, are being taxed twice. Once by the county now to fix the road that the state should be fixing. And then when they go fill up their car, by the state, which they aren't fixing. So it's unfortunate. We need to do a better job of maintaining our where our money's going and making sure we're spending and allocating the money properly.
Well, I think that's a great answer, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about being double taxed. What that means is we have the 4th most state-owned roads of any state, yet our infrastructure is in the bottom 10, the bottom half of overall infrastructure. I think localizing, taking roads back, so you're not paying 2 different taxes for the same roads. I
Right.
think that makes a great deal of sense.
It does, and I don't see a problem with that. The only thing we'll have to hold the legislators' feet to the fire. So when those taxes come in, we need to make sure that money gets back to the county. If that's something we can do, is move that money back to the county so they can fix the roads and take care of their own roads. I think 1, they can plan better. 2, they can use and know which roads are worse than others. So it's not an entire state, it's within their own county. So they can apply that money at a responsible way. And then, it's, like I said, we just got to make sure we hold our feet to the fire, because it would be a lot like the local government fund that the state hasn't refunded back to the counties.
Very true. Bryan, there was actually a major controversy, I want to say it was late last week, within the South Carolina legislature. They came back in for a day or two, and there was a major controversy between the leaders in the state Senate, Hugh Leatherman, Harvey Peeler, and then the leaders in the state House, and wanting to deal with the Santee Cooper. I don't want to get too deep in the controversy behind Santee Cooper. I don't want to get too deep in that. Did you see any of what was going on last week with the bitter exchanges between the Speaker and the President of the Senate?
I read a little bit about it, and either on Facebook or through the news articles, I read a little bit about it. I didn't watch the video of what was going on. I just read articles about it.
I'm just curious as far as is this the right time to be dealing with Santee Cooper? Is this really the right time to be dealing with something like this? I think that's what the debate was over. Is this why we're trying to get a crisis mitigated?
Yeah, I don't think this is the right time. So that concerns me a little bit. You want to make sure that you're doing these things at the right time. And I don't know if there's something pressing up there. I'm not up there. I don't know if there's something pressing that the reason why this came up or what. So at the end of the day, I think we have to stay true to the focus of getting getting our state healthy again, getting us back to work, and getting these people, to where they're not away from their jobs and these businesses don't ultimately close down for good. So I think that should be the focus right now.
It should be the absolute focus. I had to agree with you there. Awesome. Well, as far as running for the state Senate seat, June 9th, Bryan, I think you bring a lot to the table. I think you bring a lot of law enforcement experience, and it sounds like you're someone who wants to uphold constitutional principles. If someone is wanting to learn more about you, you represent a large part of Summerville and a large part of Berkeley County. This is definitely going to be a close race. Before I ask you this, actually, how they can find out about you, answer one more question for me.
Okay.
I've looked into some of the opponents, and I'm going to try and invite them on here. I've noticed that I've seen you at almost every Republican event, even if it's in out of your area. I see it at charity events. I see it everywhere. The opponent that I've never had a chance to meet her. I did see that she filed, and I did do some research and saw that she had given money to some Democrat candidates. Have you always been a Republican? Have you always held these principles? Because I've seen that your opponent who's running as a Republican might have given money to a Democrat at one point or another.
Yes, I've always been a Republican. That's how I was raised. That's my values. That's my life. My kids know it. My wife knows it, and my wife thinks I might be too strong about it. But at the end of the day, that's just who I am. And like I said, I'm very respectful about it. I'm not disrespectful. I can agree to disagree with you and still be friends. I've got several friends that are Democrats or several friends that are libertarians, and of course, libertarians and Republicans are about the same thing.
Sure.
Other than two things,
Right.
But I can respect all the sides of it and walk away still being friends no matter what.
Well, that's good to hear, man. Well, how can people find out about Bryan Adams for state Senate?
Well, they can definitely go to my Facebook page, which is Adams for SC, and check me out there. If they have any comments, concerns, or questions, feel free to give me a call. They can also give me a call at 843-494-4055. And if I don't answer the phone, just leave a message and I'll call them back.
I think this is an awesome opportunity to get a principled Republican into the South Carolina State Senate. Bryan, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right.